Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm Dr. Joe Hamlett, and alongside me is my esteemed colleague, Dr. Dave Peltz. How are you doing today, Dave?
Most excellent, sir. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right. So, as you can see, we have a guest today on our podcast, and so I didn't say that it's at the very beginning, but this is the personal, professional, and career development podcast, and we want to welcome all of our uh, prior listeners and viewers back. And if you're brand new to this, welcome to this episode. And if you're watching this, you can see that we have a special guest today. So today, I want to introduce Mr. Lowell Mora. So good morning, Lowell. How are you doing today?
Morning. How is everybody? Nice to see you.
All right.
Good.
Well,
Weather's beautiful.
absolutely. So thanks for joining us here today. And so we want to go ahead and give people a few minutes to learn who you are and what you do. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so like I said, like Joe said, my name's Lowell Mora, and I am the head of a fractional CFO firm called Impact CFO. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. I still live here and have a place in Michigan as well. So I spend a lot of time traveling the country, chasing my college kids all over the place. So um, after spending 30 years as a full-time CFO for family-owned businesses, primarily manufacturing industrial products, industrial equipment, and concluding over the last 5 or 6 years with helping two third generation family-owned businesses with successful external exits. I decided to pivot my own journey in life to running my own fractional CFO firm. So what does that look like and why am I doing that? Um, on the personal side, it gives me a lot of flexibility and the ability to help many companies rather than just one at a time. Um, there's 30 million small businesses in the US, and many of them, in particular the family-owned ones, are not well positioned for their transition or exit planning. In fact, 50% of all businesses, all family-owned businesses, after the death of the founder or the owner, end up in bankruptcy within 50 years. Within 2 years, I'm sorry.
Wow.
I say
50%
that's
within
a
two
that's a pretty
years.
good legacy if it's 50 years.
Yeah, yeah. And that's pretty stark to me. And there's a lot of nuance to working with family-owned businesses. So, I feel like at this point in my career, I really, rather than helping one company at a time, and in a lot of the cases, they're financial investors, I can um, do exactly what I want to do, help good people to continue the legacy of their businesses. And if I can help many at one time and all the other stakeholders in the business, I really like it. Um, I've got all the I'm not a doctor like these guys, but I've got all the fancy credentials. I went to Washington University in St. Louis, undergrad, CPA, worked for Arthur Andersen, worked for several companies. I have my MBA from Kellogg here in Chicago. But really what allows me to do what I do is the experience I've had working for 6 or 7 different family-owned businesses. It's really rewarding and looking forward to just doing it for many years, continuing on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for that. Well, based on Lowell's expertise and his experience, we've kind of crafted a topic this week that I think is going to go in alignment with everything he just said, and I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more. So today's topic is going to be empowered succession planning. And so we're going to allow Lowell to kick that off. So what does that mean to you, or how does that apply?
Yeah, in a very simple way, um, if you're not to get to an empowered succession planning, you need to first of all just even think about it. And most business owners today don't even want to think about what things are going to be like without them at the helm. And that's a very human thing. And it's very much at the core of the identity of the business owners. So that's the first and the biggest challenge is just dealing with the issue at all. And it's very challenging out there. The typical business owner that is, in this position, I would say is overwhelmingly, especially in the manufacturing or industrial world, is overwhelmingly male, probably in their 60s and 70s, and sort of doesn't know what they're going to do after they aren't running that business full time. So it's kind of it's very much so, okay, let's make a plan. We have to deal with this face on. And I use this kind of somewhat morbid um, saying as I ask people all the time, well, what happens if you get hit by a bus? Well, and I get shrug of the shoulders or we're screwed. I go, well, we better start planning that. You're 67 years. I mean, none of us are immortal and we really need to plan that. So rather than letting fate or random chance take the hands of your business into the next phase, I would say let's plan it tactically and intelligently, while using the humanity of the owner and what the rest of the family or owners or stakeholders are interested in. So,
Yeah,
Okay.
you bring up a lot of great points, Lowell. The fact that, people don't really think about an exit strategy is an important thing. I mean, it's almost like we put blinders on because we don't want to have to think about that,
Right. Yeah.
that what if scenario, what if my car breaks down? Well, I don't want to think about that, So it's the same thing with the business, it's like an extension of them and themselves. It's part of their family, if you will. It's one of their children, and they don't want to let it go, and that can be very challenging. So when we start talking about succession planning, especially empowered succession planning, and I would like, and this is just my distinction, succession planning can be unexpected, like in corporate America, you know, a person, I shouldn't say a guy, a person says, I'm leaving the company. Okay, so who's filling their spot? I don't know. Let's find someone. Or, oh, let's set up a succession plan. Dave, you're going to work with Joe for 2 weeks, and then
Right.
and then that's the plan. And it's like, and how many hours? Oh, I spent 4 hours with them. That's good over the last 2 weeks. And it's like, no, that is not a succession plan. Well, it is, but it's not an empowered succession plan.
Right.
And it's been my experience that a lot of big companies don't really have empowered succession plans in place. They don't have people that are interested that they should be grooming to take over. And to your point, especially in small to mid-sized businesses and family-owned businesses, it's probably even less so, to your point, because you mentioned that 50% fail or go into bankruptcy within 2 years after the loss of the owner or founder. So that is that is a huge number. And most people that have a small business or their own business don't want that legacy to die with them. They want it to be a legacy. So it keeps being handed down, like some of the candy factories that are out there. I won't mention any names. So
Well,
yeah, I think, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say this reminds me of, 10 years ago now, probably when I was, still in the military, and we had a retirement. Actually, we had multiple retirements in one weekend. And I did the math myself, and there was over 150 years of experience that went out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was spread across the organization. So, maybe not, it didn't maybe impact the entire organization in one area. It probably impacted the organization across multiple areas. And I will always remember that, just because I think about, empower succession planning. Did we do any of that? Did we, prepare, like Dave said, did we just tie somebody to somebody else for 4 hours, or did we, do this a year out? And I would probably say that probably not, because we have not done a good job of it. And so that one will always stick with me, that you could potentially lose that much experience and knowledge going out the door. So again, even with small businesses, you have this person that's probably done this maybe since they were a kid, so they
Mhm.
may have 40 years invested, 50 years invested, know how to do everything in that business. And like say, God forbid something happens to them, who's going to be in a position to step up to take that over so that it can remain relevant and stay intact. So yeah, it just those staggering numbers, after 2 years, 50% are gone. That's just amazing. That's the glue that held that organization or that small business together, and that's no longer the case anymore. So
Yeah, the interesting thing that Dave brought up and is the key is the legacy, right?
yeah,
Um, that's the one thing that rings true with business owners is their legacy, whether it's their family members coming in or even it's another employee taking over or continuing that name of that business and the employees who have worked there for many, many years. Typically, there's very significant tenure with the employees. But one of the other risks that happens with, and it's a natural occurrence with an individual owned business or run by one person, when you start getting into your later years, you naturally start to take your foot off the pedal a little bit. So the growth engine and some of the things that have been driving the business forever, if you don't start replacing those or making plans for it before you're going to leave. So now all of a sudden, the inevitable happens, and our business is kind of in a stagnant or declining position while still making money. Then that becomes harder to turbocharge again and or to market to an investor. So it's really an interesting thing, and it's almost a psychological examination as well. So my perfect client is the people that are the business owners that are kind of like my age, mid 50s. We don't want to work forever. We kind of realize that something's going to have to happen. You do an examination of are there family members, are there kids, or somebody in the family that wants to come in? No, okay, well then let's chart a course. And there's more than one way to chart that course. Some business owners aren't up for the growth mentality. Okay, then let's keep it where it is. Let's have some natural organic growth, and let's really work on the profitability so we can maximize the return on the business when it's time to do it. Because you don't always know when somebody's going to come knocking on your door. One of your competitors, one of your upstream in your supply chain wants to buy you. So you should be positioned to do that in the best way you can. It's just basically contingency planning. It's the same as just contingency planning in business. I always tell this story. I had a boss in 2007, and he came to me. We were doing the budget for 2008, and he said, "Hey, we got our budget set. Let's make our contingency plan for 2008." And I said, "Oh, I've never done that. What do we do?" "Well, what happens if the proverbial stuff hits the fan?" And I said, "Okay, let's do it." And lo and behold, 2008, the proverbial stuff hit the fan. And
yeah,
our owners at the time came to us and said, here's our plan. Do you want to stay the course and take the losses this year, or do you want to protect the bottom line? And we had it ready in a day because we had done that. So you need to do that in all areas of not only your personal life, but in particular in your business, because you never know what's going to come and hit you in the face at some point. So.
Yeah, Lowell, you really hit something that I want to capture, and that's that critical self-reflection. Joe and I talk about that, about critical self-reflection about ourselves and as individuals, but you said you have to reflect upon the company. You have to be honest with the situation with the company. What are you going to do if, what's your contingency plan? And that is hugely important because again, a lot of business owners, even in corporate America, don't want to have to think about that. Oh, we'll deal with it if it happens or when it happens, or well, that's a low risk until it happens, and it's not a low risk. So, have just being prepared for something like that is an insurance policy for the company. You have the personnel to do it. Get it in place so if something does happen, you're not going to be fumbling around for 30 days or 60 days and then lose the game. You already have a plan in place to move forward with under contingency A, B, C, D, E, and F. The IT sector is very good about having contingency plans. If the network goes down, if the power goes out, whatever, there are contingency plans that are in place. And the fact that you bring that up is hugely important because, again, most people don't want to think about those things. It's like, my parents are getting older or our parents are getting older, and it's like, well, we need to talk about when it's our time to go. And it's like, go where? To an amusement park? And it's like, no, the other go. And it's like, well, we don't
Yeah,
want to think about that. Well, we don't want to think about it, but we have to. Otherwise, we're going to be caught short. And and if you're caught short in some cases, the banks and the government win, and they take all of the assets and money, and they milk it for everything it's worth. And
right.
so having contingency plans in place is so hugely important for having an exit strategy, even if it means, you know, a succession plan. That's just one exit strategy. You mentioned, are you
Yeah.
going to be bought? Are you going to sell? Are you going to partner? What is your succession plan? What is your exit strategy for this company? You have to think about that.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
you
go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say you brought up another good point when you kind of reflected on that individual owner or body of owners that are getting older. They don't have all the energy anymore, and
Yeah.
Dave kind of touched on changing, and I think you touched on it too, the changing landscape of the business. I mean, are they going to stay competitive, or have they stayed competitive? Because now you're maybe just thinking I'm about to go or potentially go. I don't have all the energy, I don't have all the effort, so I have not kept up with business. I haven't kept up with the newest and latest things. So I guess one of the questions I have with you, for you, is of the clients that you have, have you had probably, I would imagine that you're probably working with mainly uh, business owners that want to pass it on and keep it in the family. What about that other client that's just thinking, okay, I've done my time, I don't, I'm just ready to cut the cord and I'm ready to go. And so have you helped with maybe helping people to sell, or to be in a position to sell, or be prepared to sell, or have you done that work as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's in a certain sense, that's a little bit easier. Um,
Okay.
Psychologically and mentally for the family because they've already determined, hey, none of my kids, none of the family members want to do this. They're not suited to do this, whatever the case may be. And I think this generation, our generation that's looking to pass the businesses on, is doing that a little bit better than the last one. The last generation kind of wanted to drag family members in, even if they didn't, wasn't the perfect fit for them. So when you have already the mindset that this is going to be out of the family, um, and we're going to sell it, then it's how do you prepare to best position your business to do that? And again, it's not, it's so much easier when you have a window of five plus years, because then you can act judiciously in growing and or protecting the business. And then even if you're not actively marketing the business, then you're mentally prepared and financially prepared if that offer comes along. And that happens more often than you would think in business. Um, the business owners and even those people that are in their 50s and things, they're pretty set in their ways. And at this point, they've been running the business for 25 or 30 years. And one of the dangers is, and one of the things that I bring is that, again, I'm not smarter than anybody else. I've just worked for 5, 6, 7 different companies. So I don't have that singular mindset. And this is how our industry works, or this is how the business works. And I can say, hey, why don't we try this? And even business owners that I have a great relationship with, they're a little hesitant sometimes, or, well, why would I need to do anything different? Well, it's 2024, it's not 1994.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's in some ways a bit easier. And this happens, Dave mentioned it earlier, big companies usually have succession planning, your big companies. In a lot of cases, it also turns into a competition, right?
Yeah.
So a big company, you talk about all these studies with GE and all that, they have two or three people that are jockeying. So then you've got this whole political and um, non-value added drama for years. The thing you have with the family is if there's one or two people that want to do it, and how do you deal with telling your kid that their sibling is more well suited to do it, and you can be in the business but you have to take a different role.
Right.
It's personal, and it's very difficult to do that. So in some ways, selling it outright is easier because then you're sort of done. The hard part comes with that is typically um, when you sell a business, the acquirer will want somebody to stay around for a few years on a contract. And then you have the other psychological impact of seeing somebody, in particular, if it's a financial buyer or an investor, then you have um, the having to watch people pick apart and change what you've done for many, many years. It's there's a lot of interesting things that go along with it. I kind of joke in some ways, it would have been nice to have a great business to inherit or move into my family, but in some ways it's like, hey, none of those headaches. I did everything on my own and moved on. So it's fraught with lots of stuff, and having a people that can help you along with that is the key thing, because it's emotional. It's emotional, and it's your kids, it's your family, it's your legacy, and it's really hard stuff. Um, and again, if I was in that position and I would said, hey, I'm getting towards the point that I can retire and really enjoy my life, I'd rather get those things handled and then go and whatever it is that I like to do with my free time, if I'm financially secure, and these things can make you financially secure, go ahead and do those things, right? So,
Right.
Well, you mentioned you said a couple things. The foot coming off the gas, and that makes perfect sense because as we get older, it's almost like if we're in a position to ease up and then start enjoying our own time and our own schedule, that seems natural. Like, oh, I'm gonna pass on this for a while because I'm gonna go do this that I really enjoy on the beach, And then the other thing you mentioned is, selling. What's the condition of the business? And that immediately made me start thinking about selling a house or selling a car. People sometimes think, oh, well, my car or house is worth this much money, and it's like, well, it was worth that much money, but did you maintain it? Did you wash it? Did you clean it? Did you put a fresh coat of paint on it? Are the fixtures working? Is it in good working order? Is it a shiny vehicle or shiny business? Or is it just kind of this dull, dilapidated thing that's just been limping along for a while? So I think it's important for us to share with people that just because you have a business and you think it's worth something, it may not be worth as much as you think it is unless you've been if you haven't been maintaining it properly. It's just like any other. It's like a vehicle. You have to keep it maintained in order for it to keep working. And to your point earlier, or to Joe's point earlier, the technology piece. Are you keeping up with the tools? Are you using an old electric typewriter, or do you have Microsoft, a computer system 3.1, or are you up with the latest, whatever megahertz or tetrahertz or whatever it is?
yeah.
So
I've never met a business, you make a great point. I've never met a business owner who thought their business was worth less than it really was. They always overestimate it. And first thing is they don't understand how businesses are valued,
mhm.
and it's ad hoc, or they think that they can just figure out how to do it. And you really have to hitting the maintenance and all that is really the key. It's really different than a house, because a house you can slap a fresh coat of paint on it, or if your chimney's messed up and you can fix something and make it look different very quickly. But you can't do that with a business. It takes a lot of time to do that. And it's natural. I mean, it's natural. The case I see a lot of times is, okay, I'm running this business and I'm in the Midwest and I'll be here in the summer, but I'm going to Florida or somewhere warm for 4 to 6 months, but I'm going to still kind of run the business. Well, you can't necessarily have your cake and eat it too. You have to put somebody in charge, or you have to do that. You have the right to do whatever you want and do things, but you can't take your eye off the ball. So
So
Right.
just a little time check. We got about 3 minutes left. So
We've talked mainly about businesses with the whole empower succession planning, but I think all of this is relevant at the personal level as well.
mhm.
Again, even when we're thinking about transitioning out of an organization, um, have we stayed current? I mean, we just talked about this technology. Have you got the right certifications? Are you going to be able to fit into that new organization? So that's succession planning for yourself. Are you ready to move on to something new? Or if you've been kind of like what we were talking about, the business owner that's been doing this for 40 years, um, are they equipped to do something else, or are they ready for something else? The business says, hey, we've got to cut 500 heads. You're one of those people. You've been a loyal employee, but that's all you've done. You haven't prepared yourself for moving on if something happens. So that contingency planning for you as well. And that's and me and Dave have talked about this before with clients and with coaching people, helping them to maybe open up their mind to the possibility that these things could happen. Because things may be going well one day, but the next day things could change drastically. So just
yeah,
putting yourself in a better position, again, whether it's personal, business, or professional. I mean, all those matter.
Great points,
yeah.
Joe. Absolutely.
I think that really hits into some of the thing that I've always said is lifelong learning, and it doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
formalized learning. I just learned about, and I'm utilizing it in a lot of ways, intelligent ways, is this AI stuff, is this chat GPT, all
Yep.
that.
Yep.
It's a really a time saver and enhancer. The only thing I can't figure out is Instagram. I'm an old guy and I cannot figure out Instagram. There's one team my daughter's on, and her thing that the only place they post the pictures is Instagram, and I'm always asking somebody to help me see them because I keep messing it up. But I figure that's not as important as all the other things I've learned. So
Hey, Lowell, I just want to touch on something else you said
yeah,
that we often talk about, and you said you don't have a doctorate degree or anything like that, but what you said you bring to the table is that experience working with 6 or 7 major corporations to help you get to where you are today. And again, me and Dave talk about that all the time, using those skills and experiences that you've learned in the past. They shouldn't go away. They may get hidden for a while, but you should be able to recall them when needed. So I think that's very important for people to really, again, hear the fact that all this experience you gain is relevant, regardless of what industry you go into. You can still figure out a way to apply that to something else. And so I think that's very important for people, again, to continue to understand. That all goes along with lifelong learning. And like you said, it doesn't have to be formal, but those experiences that you learned in those other organizations are learning, are skills that you can apply to something else. I just wanted to touch on that
yeah,
because
no,
me and Dave talk about that all the time.
that's
So,
great. Yeah.
like Dave said, kind of time check. So, was there anything you wanted to leave our audience with, Lowell? I mean, one last shot at over the bow.
Yeah, no, I would say I think we've hit the real key things are, you know, what does everybody always say? If you fail to plan, plan to fail.
Yeah.
And it really resonates in this situation. And you want to protect your legacy and your and your family, because you don't want your family to be hopefully lost in trying to figure out something that they're not skilled in. So, and there's a lot of ways to do it. And from the fractional CFO seat, I think it's a great one. And I'd love to help anybody who's interested in reaching out to me just to chat or talk a little bit about their business.
Okay. All right, Dave. Well, did you have any final thoughts before we?
I just want to thank Lowell for taking time out of his day and his schedule to be here with us. It was an excellent conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I believe you shared some really, really important things with our audience, and I believe it's going to change some people's lives for the better. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I just want to echo that, what Dave just said. Thanks for showing up. And again, I think you did provide some valuable information for people to consider or think about as they move forward in their lives, whichever direction, whether it's toward retirement, toward moving on, whatever they want to do. But just thinking about some of those things that's going to help with that transition. So with that, again, I'll provide Lowell's information in the description. We'll tag him on LinkedIn so when this comes out, or if you have questions, feel free to reach out to him. I'm sure he's willing to help, eager to help you. So with that, we want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People. Until next time, hopefully this resonated with you or someone else you think might benefit from this conversation. Please feel free to share. Or again, if there's content you'd like us to talk about or topics to talk about, feel free to reach out to me and Dave. We always like to hear from our audience. So with that, we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.
Thanks. Have a great day.